Welcome to Grant and Rock Warehouse, and tonight I want to welcome Brian Mcfadden to the show. Tonight we're going to take a look at the legendary 90s band Hum. We're looking at the album You'd Prefer an Astronaut. Is this the greatest album of the 90s? I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. Not much talk about Hum these days, but they did put out a record recently. Let's take a look at them and let's determine, is this one of the greatest albums of the 90s? So without any further ado, let's get this one going. Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight we're doing an episode. It's almost like in our One Done series where we look at one album and that's the only album they ever put out. But this band had put out many more records. But it's one of those bands that I don't think people talk about anymore. The band we're talking about tonight is the band Hum from Champaign, Illinois. They put out that in 95, they had a hit called Stars. That was kind of an alternative radio hit. I don't think, what did you say it went up to, Brian? Like what on the charts? Like
it charted number 11,
which isn't bad.
it's on the international charts, so that's post.
But for a band, that was like, oh my God, we've made it. But, this record really didn't do very much. I think they put out a couple of independent releases and then got signed to RCA in 95. So if you think 95, well, of course, Kurt Cobain died in 94, but you had Soundgarden, you had Alice in Chains. That whole grunge era was still going strong. So this kind of, I can see why they got signed in 95. You kind of think, well, why so late? I mean, they put out record in 91 and record in 93, but then they get signed to RCA in 95, was a bit later into the grunge era, so to speak. So you've had Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. Grunge is still going strong, even though we had the death of Kurt Cobain in 94. So it's kind of late in the game, but I'm assuming RCA heard these guys and went, well, we got to do this, because I'm not exactly sure if RCA had anybody. I'm trying to think if they really were in that grunge game at the time.
No, they weren't.
No, so this is
RCA. They're really finicky about when they release albums. So it's coming up on a holiday, they won't release anything. Or if it's coming up on an anniversary already, they won't release records on that, which I never understood that about the label. Or I think that's on them, not the band.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I want to welcome Brian to the show. Brian, how are you? Nice to see you. We're just jumping right in. I didn't even introduce you.
It's okay.
But yeah, we're here. We're going to talk about You'd Prefer an Astronaut that came out in 95. We'll touch base on the other releases a little bit, but my whole thing is, I think this is a forgotten record that needs to be revisited. I really personally think that this might be a forgotten classic. I think there's not anything quite like it. I think there are some albums that are similar, but I think Hum was very unique and stood out. There's a lot of, you almost could think it's almost like shoegaze light if you're into shoegaze, or what you said they were classified like in space rock, possibly.
Well, yeah, space rock, post-punk, maybe even post-punk, because they are pretty noisy, like a noise band. But they're atmospheric, so I think that's why they got the space rock.
Yeah, but when I listen to it, if I listen to Little Dipper, I think shoegaze right off the bat. Though the vocals aren't very, what would you say? They're not really like lost in the mix like a lot of shoegaze, drenched in reverb, but that guitar tone where it's real rich and thick and noisy, just like shoegaze.
Yeah, it's a good contrast with the clean vocals with the heavy gritty guitar. Their tones are pretty nasty. They're pretty heavy. They got some really heavy songs.
But this came out in 95. Then they did Downward to Heavenward, and that came out in 98. You'd Prefer an Astronaut did chart at 105, and it was it's in US Heat, whatever that is. Must be one of those charts for a week. The next album, Downward to Heavenward, got to 150 on the charts. So they kept going and they just never took off. But I think they were a little bit, no, I don't want to say it. Well, yeah, I'm going to use the word. They're a little bit eclectic. I think the songwriting's real good. I think the songs are catchy. The vocals are good.
Yeah.
I don't know. But they broke up after that. And then in 2020, they put out a new album. Well, relatively new. In 2020, that's great.
Yeah, it's the first album they did in 20 years. It's
Yeah.
the first album they released, and they did a bunch of one-offs like between 2003 and 2015. Just one-off. It was festivals and things, and they were looking for the big payout, which I'm sure they received handsome.
Yeah. Well, I remember when they reformed. There's some videos out there you can see, and they're just playing like small events or something, which is fine. What are you going to do? A gig's a gig, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And I don't know. What are your let's throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on you'd prefer an astronaut? Do you think that this could be maybe a forgotten classic?
It definitely is a classic because again, not everybody was into the grunge and Nirvana thing, but it was nice to have again an alternative representation of heavy with the punky lyrics. But this guy, his lyrics make no sense. I tried reading through as he's singing them, and they do nothing for me. There's nothing that stands out except for maybe the choruses. But he does like really long sentences, and a lot of it's just real jargon, really. But I think he's a great singer. I think he's great. They accomplished a lot on this album that I had never heard before or experienced with other bands, especially like the Pod, where it starts out. I don't know how to call it. I guess alternative, right? I guess alternative music.
It's when it comes down to it, they're an alternative band. Let's just say that.
Up, it gets heavy. It stays heavy, and then like going right towards the end is when they start fading out into these multiple layers with acoustic guitars going out. It was fantastic at the time. It was something I had never heard anything orchestrated that way or written that way. It was really nice.
Well, if you've listened to all these records, if there's like
oh yeah,
do you feel that, or you'd be if the Astronaut record? Do you think that's a natural progression from the two independent releases, or is it more of a I mean, it's an improvement, I think, in recording wise in the production. Obviously it's a major label debut. I was listening to this today on the headphones, and I thought, man, this record sounds good. It's really got it's a great recording. It's a great record. I absolutely love this record, but
I think that's why it was so impactful when it came out, is because the production was so good. I wrote it down. I couldn't find more about the producer and the engineer. I couldn't find more about what other bands he had done.
Well,
he had stuck with them on their other albums, but the first two, they kind of floundered. Again, it's post rock, so they're in the, I guess what experimenting. It was more like a punk noise rock band, and they still have the tones. They still have the heavy guitar tone. But the songs were shorter. 3 minutes, 4 minutes. It's a good album. Filet show with the fish on it. That's it's like 28 minutes, and every song on it's like 3 minutes long, which is kind of radio friendly. Yes.
Well, they're good songwriters. I'll give you that. I just don't know why it never took off.
Yeah, they released in a saturated market because there was there was vast visual audio sensory theater. There was Dig. There was oh god, there was even like God Machine. I mean, there was a bunch of bands that were in that scene. Even this, Smashing Pumpkins with the orchestration, and then also Bigelow Ants, Poster Children.
Yeah.
So
I'd say if anybody likes Smashing Pumpkins, you probably dig this band. I think.
Yeah, I think the tones are very similar. But
I love the Pumpkins.
It's that Chicago, their own form of the Seattle sound,
Yeah. Well, there was a quote that I saw discussing you'd prefer an Astronaut. Deftones frontman Chino Moreno said, "This is a heavy record. And it's where the Deftones got the big part of their influence from, tone-wise."
Yeah, when Chase said that, yeah. And you could hear it in the tones too. And which is
Mhm.
funny, it came out, roughly around the same time. They came out at the same time.
Yeah. So it was influential. I mean, different artists were influenced by it.
Yep.
I think it's a phenomenal record. Well, I'm
Yeah.
looking like on Wikipedia, they do put it under shoegaze, post-hardcore, space rock, alternative rock, and shoegaze. It kind of
Yeah.
goes through all those different subcategories of alternative music, you know.
Yep.
I
And I like a way that they meld their heavies in their like mellow breakdowns. I like
Mhm,
the contrast of what they do with that. It's
mhm.
always something.
Well, I don't know. I just wish this band got more attention. How did do you remember back? Well, you said that you remember this getting some play like on 120 Minutes or Headbangers Ball.
Yep.
I don't ever remember that, but I don't think I was watching it so much then.
They used to play the pot a lot. That was really good. I don't know, not to say that Stars was burning out. Stars was still a strong hit at the time.
Mhm.
And I never saw anything for I'd Like You to Grow Your Hair Long. I've never heard that on the radio or released as a single, but it was released because of the album sales were doing so good. That's the next one that they
Yeah,
were
it said it
pumping.
never got.
I never heard it on radio play.
I don't know where. I don't even see that they really even charted. I mean, they came out, but
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't see where they ever took off or anything. Um, if you had like, I'm just curious, if you had like an album, if you could have one album, what would you choose? What would you recommend to someone watching this show and thinking, "Wow, boy, sounds like something I might be into"? What would you recommend them starting out with, Brian?
I would go with Inlet and just go with the heavier, kind of dronier stuff first,
Mm-hmm.
and then that will actually give a well-rounded understanding of what this band kind of is about. It's the same formulaic on all the albums across the library. So it's heavy, mm, atmospheric, and then it's acoustic, and then they do have a lot of ballady stuff. Um, Not too much. There's a couple albums that ended
But is it
really,
drony
really.
like in a shoegaze type of thing, or is it
So,
still got that?
yeah, right.
Does it still have the
Um,
similar feel that they had like on Astronaut, or it
yeah, with
progressed?
the feedbacks and right. Even some strings around there. Low, I don't know, not an oboe or anything, but you know what I mean. Some low wind instruments in there
Yeah,
that
yeah,
help along
yeah. Right.
with the undertones.
Yeah.
I would start with Inlet because that again, after not doing anything for 20 years, they released that, and that's like an end of year pick for me, 2020. Of
Hmm.
course, that's when everything started exploding and imploding, 2020.
Yeah.
So
I wonder why
that's
they. I'm assuming they just broke up because I'm not exactly sure why they broke
yeah,
up
they got into a van wreck. They got into a wreck in Canada,
and lost their equipment.
and no, I don't know what happened. I think it jaded them, and they basically broke up. They had 11 shows to finish on the tour, and this was
Hmm.
for the album after Astronaut, which was
Oh, downward is heavenward.
yeah, right,
Hmm. Which is
downward heavenward. They got into an accident, and then the drummer quit, but he ended up coming back. So, but they had a lot of problems before Astronaut keeping people. Their first drummer. He left after the first recording. They
mhm.
kept going through basis. Like they would come in and stay for a couple of days, and then they would be replaced. I don't know if people understood the music or what it was. That's they. I think they got jaded with it, and then they said that they weren't very nice with dealing with like the publishers and the PR people and all that
Hmm.
stuff. They said it could have been nicer because they wanted to hold on to their distinct sound. Of course, RCA, we need another hit. We need another hit. And
Right,
it's they just don't work that way. They don't write that.
right. Well, I was just looking the follow-up album, Downward is Heavenward, came out in 98. We had a couple of 3 years off in between records.
They were only around for 11 years. That's it. They were only around 11 years.
I mean, it
That was
had
a
two
short.
singles. It had Coming Home and Green to Me that didn't do anything. But the
Yeah.
reviews for this record All Music gave it 4.5 stars. AV Club gave it an A-. Pitchfork gave it a 3.4. Punk News Org, whatever that is, gave it 4.5. It's gotten great reviews all over the place. But they just couldn't. It's just one of those bands that just couldn't, Astronaut got 4 stars. I mean, this is great stuff, but it's just, I don't know. Just didn't happen.
They got better. They got better. The producing got better. The song structures got better after Astronaut. They, Astronaut's a good, put it on the CD player and, clean the house or something. It's good for like background noise because it's consistent. All their albums are consistent. That's one thing I can say about them. They're consistently that sound.
That's cool.
So,
what would you rate? What would you give this record out of 10?
I out of 10,
yeah,
I would definitely give it like 8.5 to a 9.
Holy crap! Nice.
I love it. I love it all the way through. There's no song I skip, but there's some songs I prefer over others. But it's a good wholesome record. There's a little bit of everything for everyone.
So I'm gonna go with it. You're gonna go with a 9 on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9. I love the album. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. I love the whole thing all the way through, and I was planning on giving it a 9. So, well, our combined tally, people, is a 9. I think it's a classic. I mean, I could even go 10. I think Downward's probably a stronger record, but I have not heard Inlet, so I really can't.
Ooh.
I'm gonna have to.
That's a good one. That one blew everybody's mind when it came out. It came out of nowhere. It dropped. It dropped out of the sky, like a meteorite. And then it was on everybody's gotta have list. Everybody was posting when they were receiving it, and there was a lot of buzz about it when it came out in 20. It was highly anticipated. When it was the pre-order, they sold out of those too, for the record.
I like the album cover.
Yeah. It almost looks like a proggy looking album, right?
So that was the last album to feature original drummer Brian St. Paris.
Before
he passed away
a year after they recorded that.
Oh,
he passed away suddenly. He was 52. They said he passed away suddenly. They didn't say why.
The reviews for this, though, it's just like the rest of their catalog. 4.5, 5 star. The Daily California gave it 5 stars. All Music gave it 4.5. It's like these guys are
very
just
strong.
Very strong. See, there you go. I guess we're focusing on the Astronaut album, but I think maybe, possibly, you probably couldn't go wrong with anything. So there you go, kids. We'll give it a 9. Brian, do you have anything else to add?
No. I think it's a very, I think they're a really strange band, but they seem to a lot of people seem to just gravitate towards. I don't know what else to say.
More of a critic's darling kind of thing,
right?
As opposed to the public. The critics got them. They understood what was going on,
Yeah, surprisingly, because they love to poop on people, man. They love to do that.
I mean, if you look at Steely Dan, the critics like Steely Dan too, but the public also likes Steely Dan. Steely Dan, you listen to the lyrics make no sense at all. They're all way out there.
Yeah.
But they still were able to strike a chord with the public. Hum, not so much. Yeah, they had a couple of hit singles, but those albums didn't do anything, and it just could have been timing. Steely Dan, if Steely Dan would have came out 10 years later, who knows if they would have taken off, Everything has to line up, Brian. It all has to make sense in the world. Mother Nature somehow. So I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Go leave your comments. Do you like Hum? Do you like any of the other records? Give us some insight on your thoughts on the band Hum. I don't think they're getting any love, but they're getting love over here. So Brian and I both give this record a 9 out of 10. All right, everybody, leave a comment, like, subscribe, everything. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.